humanization course, but occasionally we decide to make it open to the public on campus so that those who are interested in listening to the great experiences by former President of the International Criminal Court, Professor Sang-Hyun. So for now, I'd like to invite Dr. Ki-Bong Park, member of the Korean Bar, and also he holds a doctorate degree in the International Criminal Court area. And then Dr. Beck will introduce Professor Song. So,
It is my great honor to introduce you, Honorable Judge Sang-Hyun. Judge Song is currently an emeritus professor of law at Seoul National University and an honorary president of the Korean Committee for UNICEF. But as all of you know, he is more well known as former president and judge of the ICC International Criminal Court, a world-renowned authority on international criminal law. Judge Song graduated from Seoul National University Law School and also graduated from Cornell Law School with JCP in 1970. He taught as a professor of law at Seoul National University Law School from 1972 to 2007 and lectured as a visiting professor of law schools in several countries, notably Melbourne Law School, Harvard Law School, and New York University School of Law. He is also the author of a number of publications. Aside from his academic career, he served as a member of the advisory committees to the Korean Supreme Court and the Ministry of Justice for 25 years. As such, he took part in initiatives to reform the national litigation system, commercial arbitration system, criminal justice and prison system, and court management. Judge Song was also chair of the Policy Advisory Committee for National Human Rights Commission from 2015 to 2019. Turning to the ICC, he served as a judge of the ICC from 2003 to 2015 for a total of 12 years. He was one of the first judges of the court elected in 2003 and assigned to the appeals division. He was re-elected to the court in 2006 for a term of 9 years, and 3 years later, he was elected as president of the court and re-elected in 2012 for another 3-year period. Judge Song has continued his commitment to international humanitarian law and human rights as a co-founder of the Legal Aid Center for Healing and of the Childhood Leukemia Foundation in Seoul, as well as serving as a member of the board of directors of UNICEF Korea. Last year, Sang-Hyun Foundation for International Justice, Peace, and Human Rights was established in commemoration of his achievements at the ICC, and this foundation is actively conducting various missions for continued contribution to international peace and justice. I hope you will pay attention to his honorable speech this afternoon.
Thank you, Dr. Beck. Also, I recognize that there are several VIPs in this room. Professor Sang-Hyun is sitting behind. I recognize him. Thank you very much for coming. And then the Professor Sang-Hyun from the law school, who is also currently president of the International Law Association of Korea. So Professor Kang is here. Mr. Jin-Young Chung is a public prosecutor. First, he is my brother. So Mr. Chung is here. All right. Now for the main, I'd like to invite His Excellency Professor Sang-Hyun to this podium. So let us welcome you with a big round of applause.
몇 시에 끝나면 있고요. 맥시멈 45분에서 1시간 남게 가지고 계십니다. 1시간? 네. 그러니까 굉장히 일찍 끝나셔도 되고요.
아니, 시간이 모자랄까?
네. 좀 더 하셔도 사실은 괜찮습니다.
그래요?
네. 로딩하고 있습니다.
위로 올라가는
올려줄 수 있어요.
나중에 그림으로 보여주고 해도 되니까 지금 안 해도 돼.
네. 그러면 일단
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pity that I didn't graduate from Korea University. I am, as he introduced me, I am a graduate of Seoul National and Cornell in the United States. The International Criminal Court, or the ICC, opened its doors on July 1st, 2002. The Korean government hurriedly ratified the Rome Statute on November the 13th, 2002, and proceeded to the nomination of the first judge candidate. When the Minister of Foreign Affairs delegated the power of nomination to the Korean National Expert Group of the Permanent Court of Arbitration, the process began immediately. Although I never applied for this nomination process, I was suddenly drafted as a Korean candidate. After a short but cutthroat competition election campaign, I was elected to the bench of the ICC by getting the highest votes on the first ballot round at the Assembly of Assembly of States Parties in New York. The inauguration ceremony was held on March the 10th, 2003, at a very special place for Koreans. The place was the Knight Hall, the oldest wooden structure in the Netherlands, which was the location of the second World Peace Conference held in The Hague in 1907, where Mr. Lee-jun, a secret envoy of our king at that time, a patriot, was denied entry. Due to the initial situation of the court, it is January 1st, 2004 that I was called to the full-time position. From the beginning, I was rumored to be, or reputed to have extensive experience in human resources management and expertise in computer technology, which is not true. Many crucial administrative decisions were carried out to solidify the foundation of the International Criminal Court, such as selecting the high-ranking staff and implementing court automation systems. In particular, I successfully completed the courtroom automation project capable of simultaneous trilingual interpretation in the defendant's language, English, and French. Since the end of the Second World War, ICJ for peaceful resolution of disputes between states. 2, collective security system of the UN Security Council for various sanctions, interventions, and even dispatch of forces. These 2 UN mechanisms have been found to be just short of one major thing. That is, inability to prosecute individual perpetrators before an international criminal court. Namely, the UN was insufficient to handle large-scale international crimes such as aggression, war, genocide, and crimes against humanity that seriously threaten world peace. One of the most precious values that we humans want to secure is peace. One of the most important trends of the world at this moment would be no sustainable peace without international criminal justice. No peace without justice. Since the first idea of creating an international criminal court popped up around 1925, since then there have been several attempts to do so. With the conclusion of the Genocide Convention in 1948, there was a specific proposal to create an international tribunal to investigate and prosecute such a heinous crime, genocide. And the International Law Commission, or ICJ, ILC, mandated by the UN General Assembly, drafted in 1950 a proposal for the establishment of an international criminal court. However, as the East-West Cold War intensified, such brilliant ideas fell out of everybody's interest until Trinidad and Tobago's president, Arthur Robinson, reintroduced the idea for discussion at the General Assembly of the United Nations in 1989. In accordance with the resolution of the Security Council, ad hoc international criminal tribunals were mushroomed in the meantime to achieve international criminal justice as needed on a case-by-case. In cases such as Liberia, Sierra Leone, East Timor, Lebanon, the former Yugoslavia, Rwanda, Cambodia, ad hoc international criminal tribunals were established to punish perpetrators. The international military tribunals in Nuremberg and Tokyo could also be included in this category. However, ad hoc international tribunals were not exactly desirable in terms of predictability, political independence, and efficiency because of the difficulty of cooperation and funding from the concerned countries. Therefore, people dreamt of a treaty-based permanent international criminal court that could provide a more stable foundation for peace. The Rome Statute was miraculously concluded in 1998 and ratified by the necessary 60 countries faster than expected. Prior to the International Criminal Court, there has been no independent, permanent International Criminal Court. It was a rare exception, therefore, to investigate and prosecute most serious international crimes. There are now 3 permanent treaty-based international courts. ICJ, which stands for International Court of Justice, and ITLOS, which stands for International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, both under the UN system on the one hand, and the ICC, totally independent of the United Nations, on the other. The creation of the ICC in itself was a great achievement. I believe that the advent of the ICC and the broader Rome Statute system has changed the way the world has come to think of and respond to grave international crimes. The ICC's judicial interventions contribute to establishing lasting peace as a key element in reconciling societies and ending cycles of violence. By helping the entrenchment of strong legal and societal norms that strictly prohibit massive crimes and human rights abuses, the Rome Statute system can help us move toward a safer world in which people around the globe can live and prosper in peace. However, this is not a task for the justice sector alone, and international development agencies such as World Bank, IMF, UNDP would have to play a more important role. It is also a goal that can be achieved only with the simultaneous strengthening of democracy, development, and the rule of law, which is another aspect of the ICC collaboration. The preamble of the Rome Statute emphasizes that crimes that have shocked the conscience of humanity and caused millions of men, women, and children to be victims in the past must be punished, as they threaten the peace, security, and well-being of the world. In other words, it emphasizes a strong intention to respect human dignity and values, achieve justice in the international community, and put an end to impunity for those who kill innocent people. Basically, the member states themselves must prosecute the 4 major crimes through their domestic judicial procedures. If, however, the member states would be either unable or unwilling to do so, then the ICC can then step in and investigate and punish them. This is the so-called the principle of complementarity of the ICC. Only the state may bring a complaint, and no individual or organizations may do so under the Rome Statute. Unlike in the past, domestic criminal justice procedures of each member state become all organically interconnected around the ICC. A global and comprehensive international criminal justice system is thus emerged with close cooperation of various international, regional agencies and relevant non-governmental organizations or civil societies when necessary. The Rome Statute set up an entirely new paradigm of international criminal justice that has made accountability for atrocity crimes an integral aspect of the rule of law. If all member states would enact necessary domestic implementing legislation and enforcement of judgment, conclude agreements on witness protection, extradition, and enforcement of judgment, this will strengthen a new, powerful, and sustainable international criminal justice system. Korea has already legislated the title as the Act on the Punishment, etc., of crimes within the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court in 2011 to prepare for the domestic punishment of international crimes. No agreement has been signed yet regarding witness protection or enforcement of judgment. If International Criminal Court has investigated and punished the accused for the 4 core international crimes and the entire criminal proceedings came to an end, it is said to have achieved what is commonly known as retributive justice. It is not much different from that of a domestic criminal court, functionally. The international criminal trial should also show the world the need for deterrence and necessity for securing peace through justice. In fact, the establishment of the ICC was driven by the zeitgeist of the 20th century, which emphasized the sustainable peace could not be secured without international criminal justice. It could also be seen as a response to such a contemporary demand. Indeed, the creation of the ICC has made broadening of the fight against impunity possible. The newly created ICC has a unique feature that goes beyond conviction of perpetrators, reaching out to the victims with preventive relief and protection through the Trust Fund for Victims. The Trust Fund is currently funded by voluntary contributions from state parties apart from their annual assessment. No matter how severely a perpetrator may be punished, the poor situation of countless victims would not improve. Although the ICC is not an international development agency or aid program, it is a pioneering experiment in human history to introduce mechanisms that protect and support victims and families beyond the traditional criminal justice. It reaches out to the millions of victims with various programs for psychiatric rehabilitation, children's education, and supply of artificial limbs, etc. Therefore, the ICC is not another criminal court for the international community, but far more than that. This epoch-making experiment of humankind for the first time in human history cannot and should not fail. After being elected as the second president of the ICC, I focused on the victim protection programs and victims' positions in connection with the contemplating to concretize the mission and the purpose of the court and setting its future directions. Since victims already have clear ways to participate in the criminal process under the Rome Statute, not as a witness, but as almost a party, there is also a need to protect them appropriately until the process outcome is finalized. Considering the scale, complexity, and specificity of international criminal trials, which can take many years to conclude, it is even more important to protect victims in the meantime. It is a new path to create the victim protection programs and various outreach programs in the ICC system. Therefore, the concept of criminal justice that the ICC seeks to achieve includes not only retributive justice, but also retributive justice by punishment, but also restorative justice and reparative justice by protection of victims. International economic organizations have so far defrayed emergency recovery fund based on feasibility reports sent in by their economic experts, especially to war-torn countries. However, experiences have amply shown that as most of the funds provided in this way have ended up in the hands of corrupt local governments or affiliated organized crimes, they have not produced any intended economic recovery. It is now time to innovate such a traditional aid-giving procedures. In other words, prior to any actual aid delivery, international justice organizations such as the ICC should first intervene and introduce the necessary basic legal and judicial framework while punishing those responsible for the heinous crimes. International justice institutions such as the ICC and international aid-giving agencies such as World Bank, IMF, UNDP must therefore work out a formula of sharing initial justice costs and discuss a package plan for aid to enhance its efficiency and effectiveness. All international support agencies must bear in mind the issue of justice for achieving peace, collaborate together with the ICC, and must advance the initial justice cost. I emphasize these new ideas in my keynote speech at the annual meeting of the World Bank. Just 30 years ago, who would have thought that international core crimes would be prosecuted by an independent, permanent international institution, and that investigating such crimes would become expected norm rather than a rare exception. Here lies the monumental achievement of the Rome Statute. It set up an entirely new paradigm of international criminal justice, which has made accountability for atrocity crimes an integral aspect of the rule of law. Now the world knows that perpetrators of the gravest crimes need to be and can be held accountable in the first place by the national courts, and failing that, by the ICC. There are already signs of a growing deterrent effect of the ICC's permanent presence. Ministers from some states have personally told me many times that the threat of the ICC prosecution was a crucial factor that helped to prevent large-scale bloody violence, especially surrounding elections in those countries. The term genocide was coined by Raphael Lemkin, a US diplomat, and the term crimes against humanity was coined by Hirsch Lauterpacht, a British international law scholar. Both international legal experts were born into Jewish families in Poland, and once studied law together at the same professor's law school at the University of Lviv, which is currently located within the Ukraine. After settled in the US and the UK respectively, they played a key role in convicting Nazi war criminals at the Nuremberg trials. Now, my personal friend, Professor Philip Sands of University College London, continues to study their legacy and achievements. They are pioneers who made significant academic contributions to the development of international criminal law. Another big achievement is that we have turned the ICC from a court on paper into a leading actor in the area of enforcement of international justice. 123 states have so far ratified the Rome Statute. The ICC has active cases at all stages of proceedings. All triggering mechanisms of the ICC's jurisdiction have been activated. We have to double our effort to persuade big powers to ratify the Rome Statute. The US, Russia, China, and India still stay out of the system. There were 124 countries that ratified the Rome Statute. Since the Philippines withdrew from the treaty, there are currently 123 states parties. The Duterte administration of the Philippines had executed many drug-related suspects without a fair trial under the pretext of eradicating drug use, prompting a warning from the ICC prosecutor that a possible investigation could be launched. In response, stationed in over 80 countries would be frequently charged to the ICC as a means of anti-American activity abused by the locals. The most fierce opposition to the Rome Statute was due to this particular concern. The US government was not convinced by the counter-argument, that ordinary crimes committed by local US troops are subject to the SOFA agreement, but are not subject to the Rome Statute in any case. The United States forced its allies to sign a bilateral immunity agreement that prevented them from ratifying the treaty, and almost all countries except Korea have signed such an agreement, more than 100 countries. In addition to these practical reasons, the United States has a tradition of not ratifying any international treaty that seems to limit its sovereignty due to its sense of superiority and exceptionalism. A US Supreme Court justice, my personal friend I met, once bluntly said that if the ICC's decision would be subject to review by the US Supreme Court, then the US might consider ratification. However, the US showed a contradictory response by not recognizing ICC while welcoming the ICC's warrant of arrest against Putin. China originally opposed the conclusion of the Rome Statute. China did not ratify it, particularly because it argues the referral of resolution of the Security Council paved the way for political interference in the international criminal justice process. However, China has shown great interest in the crime of aggression. Although it's not a member at all, it sent a large, perhaps the largest delegation like the United States, all the way to Kampala Conference on Aggression and meticulously interfered in the process. Unlike Western constitutional monarchies, some monarchies elsewhere refuse to ratify Rome Statute because they fear that ignoring sovereign immunity could have negative legal consequences for their kings and queens. In addition, they hesitate to ratify the treaty for fear of being subject to the ICC process retroactivity. If soldiers who had suppressed the rebellion in the past are now in government power, although the Rome Statute emphasizes that it has no retroactive effect and applies from the date of accession onward, there are still lingering doubts about this provision. Recently, the prosecutor of the ICC requested an arrest warrant against Putin, which was granted by a pre-trial chamber of the ICC. The prosecution team made a bold move based on evidence collected during visits to the battlefields and related cities in Ukraine, marking the third time in history that such a request has been made. In the first Sudan and Libya not being ICC member states and therefore falling outside the court's jurisdiction. Proceedings were initiated following the UN Security Council referral resolutions. Although the warrant was issued, Gaddafi of Libya died shortly thereafter, and Sudan's President al-Bashir is imprisoned in the internal coup. As a non-member state, Russia is not subject to the ICC jurisdiction. However, Ukraine accepted exercise of the ICC's jurisdiction under the Rome Statute before officially ratifying it in the parliament. This allowed the ICC investigation team to enter the country and conduct investigations, ultimately leading to the prosecutor's request for a warrant for Putin's arrest based on their findings. The charges include the fact that hundreds of Ukrainian children were abducted from the orphanages and child care facilities and forcibly taken to Russia. ICC prosecutor, in my view, is very smart. If he applied the charges like war crime and genocide, then that charges would immediately become politicized, and the focal point of the whole the criminal process is out of everybody's mind. It's very smart, in my view. Once an arrest warrant is issued, the ICC sends a letter requesting all the countries in the world to arrest and surrender the suspect to The Hague. However, Putin refuses to recognize the ICC and has furthermore ignored its arrest warrant. It is highly unlikely that the Russian government would arrest and surrender Putin to The Hague. But the ICC's arrest warrant remains valid until his death, since there is no statute of limitation. Furthermore, member states have a treaty obligation to arrest and surrender the suspect to The Hague if and when the suspect enters their territory. Therefore, Putin faces many inconveniences such as travel restrictions and diplomatic limitations until the end of his life. It also has significant symbolic meaning in the international community. According to CNN, the warrant that the ICC issued has significantly reduced the Putin's world. The Ukrainian government, as well as non-governmental and international organizations, are consistently investigating and documenting numerous crimes committed in the conflict zone. The evidence and testimony so collected are preserved to ensure that they are not forgotten and have significant meaning and usefulness when looking back on the past. In fact, very few people imagine that the Nazi regime, which committed many atrocities during the World War II, would ever be brought to trial for their war crimes. However, despite imperfect prosecution, the world did not overlook their crimes and held them accountable in court. In the end, we may not follow the same path, but it is possible that a similar fate would await those who committed heinous crimes in the future. There is now a large body of jurisprudence on many fundamental legal issues, and I am personally proud to say that the judges have successfully safeguarded the fairness of the proceedings at the ICC as a cornerstone of the court's integrity. Whoever has closely followed the trials at the ICC would have seen that the judges are truly independent and impartial, and they are the ones who have the last say in the courtroom. However, there are some challenges. Challenge number one is state cooperation. By adopting the Rome Statute, states establish not just the court, but an entire system of new international justice. The architecture of the system splits responsibilities whereby the ICC carries out judicial work, but enforcement is devolved to states. Therefore, the ICC will investigate, prosecute, and try suspects of crimes, but for arrest warrants to be implemented, evidence to be provided, witnesses to be protected, and sentences to be enforced, states must assist the ICC. Cooperation remains an area of vital importance to the ICC's function and judicial efficiency. State cooperation is absolutely critical at every stage of the entire ICC process. Most of the time, states cooperate with the ICC, but not always. And the lack of cooperation can seriously diminish the ICC's ability to deliver justice. It is important not to lose sight of the fact that cooperation with the ICC is a treaty obligation, and it must be treated as such. However, the need for cooperation goes far beyond the technical issues I just mentioned, directly to the political support that the ICC requires. This is nowhere more evident than with the referrals of non-state party situations by the Security Council. When it comes to Darfur, no Sudanese government officials have so far been surrendered to the ICC, including former President al-Bashir. In the Libya situation, suspects are likewise yet to be transferred to The Hague. Unfortunately, the Security Council has not provided the ICC with the help it needs to discharge the mandates given to it in the Security Council resolutions. A far more consistent and vigilant approach by the Security Council is needed. There is also a financial question that requires attention. The Rome Statute and the relationship agreement between the ICC and the UN anticipate that the UN shall help fund the costly investigations and prosecutions arising from UN Security Council referrals of the situation. Yet, in both Sudan and Libya resolutions, a provision was rather added prohibiting UN fund from helping the ICC. This has meant that states parties have picked up the bill for work done by the ICC stemming from a Security Council decision adopted on behalf of the entire world community in order to preserve peace and security. This conflict will need to be addressed in the near future. I cannot see it easily resolved without a constructive approach by all countries on the Security Council, including US. Cooperation should come to be regarded as routine, not as an exercise of extraordinary political will. This applies to states parties and also states not yet parties, since the ICC has no tools to enforce its decisions. Priority needs include the arrest of suspects and various agreements on the relocation of witnesses, enforcement of sentences, the situation of released persons. It is now up to the states which create the ICC and its other supporters to help identify from their perspective the challenges in providing cooperation and assistance, and to identify actions that can be taken. It is my hope that the Assembly of States Parties will consider as a matter of priority how they can best use the political and diplomatic tools at their disposal to bring about cooperation. Challenge number 2, complementarity. The ICC does not replace national courts under the complementarity principle. The ICC is therefore a court of last resort. This means that the ICC cannot override properly functioning national court of a sovereign state. As I said, it is primarily a state's responsibility to conduct proceedings. The fight against impunity can only succeed when the national justice system of each state is strong enough to stand against the heinous crimes. In order to strengthen the national justice system, there are domestic laws to amend, legal professionals to train, penal systems to improve, and above all, a domestic implementing legislation of the Rome Statute to adopt. Since the ICC will be only able to deal with a small number of cases, far more must be done to ensure that national courts are willing and able to act. Here, development assistance agencies are urged to make assistance for justice a priority of their programs. Also, the work will fall to the ICC partners, namely diverse international agencies such as UN and regional organizations such as EU, the Commonwealth, La Francophonie, OAS, Mercosur, blah blah, and states and civil society. Lastly, challenge number 3 is universality. The court jurisdiction is, as you know, not universal. The court only has jurisdiction over nationals of states parties or crimes committed on the territory of a state party. When I was elected the ICC president in 2009, my main priority was to visit and persuade as many states as possible for ratification. The number of states parties at that time was only 110. My target region was Asia in particular, as I come from the region. And the Asia-Pacific region is most underrepresented. I realized through my trips that states that still suffer from the wounds of war are rather reluctant to join the Rome Statute for fear that their leadership might subject to the ICC prosecution for the atrocities that some leaders in power had allegedly committed. To dispel such suspicions, I emphasized many times that when a state ratifies the Rome Statute, it applies from the date of joining onward. In other words, if a country joins, the Rome Statute would be a safety net for the future. Many states remain strongly suspicious and skeptical of this legal reality of temporal non-retroactivity. The climate for achieving universality has improved somewhat over time. The US government in particular no longer put direct pressure on many countries not to ratify the Rome Statute. The reach of the Rome Statute system can further enhance perceptions of its legitimacy, as the court already works closely with other partners to share information and coordinate efforts toward expanding the Rome Statute. There are two small weaknesses in the Rome Statute. One, more effective procedural and substantive means to address states parties' non-cooperation should be devised under Article 87, Paragraph 7. Two, a practical solution for the situation of acquitted or released persons need to be found, especially when that person refused to go back to their own country. Due to the jurisdictional and other limitations of treaty-based international criminal court, alternatives to full-fledged judicial body has been sought over time internationally. You know that, first of all, the UN sponsored the Commission of Inquiry, or COI, which was chaired by Michael Kirby, Australian Justice. It's a report that deals in great detail with North Korean human rights violations sent a profound shock to the world. After that, a new mechanism with limited functions has been introduced. And IIIM on Syria, for example. International independent integral mechanism on Syria. And IIM for Myanmar are in operation mainly to collect evidence. In closing, I hope that the states parties will take active part in the collective efforts of the international community to strengthen the rule of law, which is one of the most effective ways to increase the chances of peace, stability, and well-being of the world. There are many challenges: competing interests, limited resources, political opportunism, cultural differences, different visions, and so forth. But at the end of the day, there are also undeniable shared values and common goals that humans everywhere hold dear. Men, women, and children everywhere want to live in a world of peace, security, and harmony without fear of violence and suffering. The international arena in the 21st century is very dynamic and crowded by various international organizations and more. The actors are many and various. We should encourage the next generation of leaders and actors like you to always aspire for universal criminal justice, as the ICC will continue its mission from now into the future as a giant leap forward in the global fight against impunity. Thank you.
So for the remaining time, we will take some questions from the floor. So we'll rearrange the table so that you can sit.
First of all, thank you for coming. Thank you for the good opportunity. It was very insightful and I've learned a lot today. I have a question about the ICC decision on the case of crimes unsolved due to corruption. And my rationale comes from the concept of femicide, where there's a lot of states in Latin America where there are crimes against humanity, where women are being killed just because of the hate. I heard that if a state is within the jurisdiction of the ICC and international organizations have made efforts to try to solve this issue in one state, but due to corruption, this issue has not been able to be solved, what would the ICC decide to do?
You know, as I said, a very closely interconnected international judicial criminal system has emerged. So while you are dealing with these 4 serious international crimes nationally, of course, there is a concern about corruption and just everything else. Any jurisdiction no jurisdiction is entirely free from corruption and so on. But unlike before, there is a ICC always closely watching what you are doing. So that mere factor alone would serve as to a certain extent a deterrence for the corrupt activities in the courts or outside the courts. In fact, the corruption issue looms larger outside the judicial process. For example, Dr. Beck is the next candidate for the ICC judiciary, nominated by the Korean government. He's in the middle of engaging in the election campaign. But in certain jurisdictions, there's a long, dictator who still have developed very close connections with certain families or interests. So that corrupt country's nomination would be, from time to time, unacceptable to us in terms of his own or her own career and capability and even language proficiency and so on and so forth. So we have a big problem. ICC system has a big such problem. So a person like me was elected by the Assembly of States Parties to oversee all this election process. So I'm going to The Hague for 2 weeks some examinations on all the candidates and conduct a personal interview one by one and just write a sort of a report. Highly recommended, just recommended, and not recommended. So we just evaluated these candidates through the personal interviews. So that way, it's not a panacea for to prevent the corruption, but we are really concerned with this issue, and just we have been doing what we can do to prevent this corruption. It is the issue that everyone in the international ICC community is actively aware of and try to deal with. I can just tell you that.
All right, thank you. Next question from there, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
Hello, I'm Leah Chin and I'm majoring in International Studies at Korea University, and actually I'm not good at speaking in English, so I wrote it down. Thank you for your interesting lecture, and it was really honor for me to meet you in person. And I have 2 questions. First one, what was the driving force to work in the field of international crime? And second one, if you
Driving force for.
To have you working in the international.
Okay.
And second one, if you could recommend an activity for a university student, what would it be?
You have.
So first the question was that what has made it to focus on this international criminal area? What has made you focus on this international? What has made you? Why did you start to work on this area? And second is what would you recommend for the student?
No, my answer to your first question was that it's more than 20 years have gone by since the creation of the ICC. So by now, we could say that some of the professional experts on the international criminal law have emerged through studying or whatever, practice or whatever. But international criminal law is a very new area. There was no professional expert on this area at all when we landed in for the first time in 2003. Nobody. So the American jurisdiction is proud of their developed and bloomed legal culture. Even in the United States, there were no academics or professionals, legal professionals who are specialized in this particular area. But as time goes by, many of the American lawyers who worked for the ad hoc international criminal tribunals or the ICC or elsewhere now just went back home and start teaching international criminal law. So by now, in the US, there are enough number of so-called scholars in this particular area. It's nobody knew. I can give you one example. I once delivered a lecture to the law professors, hundreds of them, from the Middle East. And after my lecture, they divided into 2 groups. And international No, this is after all criminal law, so we have to teach this course, not international law professors. And likewise, even there was a controversy and dispute between international law professors group and the criminal law professors group. So it's a pretty new area. So it's the future is wide open for you if you are interested and specialized in this area. What was the point?
What would you recommend for the students? What would you recommend for the students in the future, for their future? 학생들한테 뭘 저기 권하고 싶으시, 조언하고 싶으신지. 학생들한테 저기 권하고 싶으시거나 제안하고 싶으신지. 네, 제안하고 싶으신지.
Well, my past experience indicates that my former students, including Dr. Bag and Professor Cho, just everybody, used to be taught by me, but except these guys, the judges and prosecutors and practicing lawyers in this country seems to be very closed and